Hello, dears. We are continuing the OSS Morale Operations Field Manual. I did find some copyright-free music from the 1930s and 40s, so you shouldn't have any problems with copyrights because of the music I'm playing. And the manual itself is declassified and in the public domain. In general, field manuals of any type are federal and in the public domain for reasons. These reasons being these reasons. So, we should not have any further copyright issues. So we are continuing at 21. This is page 18. I think we just covered rumor intelligence, and now we are going into false leaflets, pamphlets, and graphics. Let's get to work. All right, false leaflets, pamphlets, and graphics. This type of implement refers to printed, mimeographed, or written literature and graphics distributed secretly in enemy territory and under concealed sponsorship. This includes chain and other anonymous letters, chalking symbols and messages on wall, false pamphlets sponsored by a belligerent nation, and attempts to convey the impression that it's a bona fide message from the people's own fellow countrymen who are sharing the same risks as the rest of the population and have similar aspiration, aims, and goals. So you can also do this online. B. Appeal to nationalistic attitude is more effective when made by the nationals of the group than made by another nation which has its own nationalistic axe to grind. Likewise, incitement to action or revolt coming from a representative of an aggrieved group is more effective than such an incitement coming from an outsider. Whenever an attempt is made to assure potential sympathizers that they would not be alone in resistance activities. Such assurance comes better from a group which is presumably carrying on the same activities under the same conditions and taking the same risks. C. Use of false leaflets. In general, the false leaflet can be used for dissemination of forbidden news, spreading of rumors, exposing the various activities of enemy officials and collaborationists, and giving reassurance to potential sympathizers, instructing in sabotage, inciting to subversive activities, and preparing the populace for cooperations with invading troops. Or guerrillas. The false leaflets can be capitalized upon by propaganda agencies in popularizing a passive resistance campaign, such as the V campaign or the 19 and 18 campaign. It may be desirable to have the campaign planted via false pamphlets. This spontaneous activity can then be picked up by the authorized propaganda agencies. The false pamphlet can be effectively used to make the enemy uneasy about the loyalty of people in the territory. The very existence of clandestine pamphlets is evidence of underground activities. Operational problems and limiting factors. D. While false literature ostensibly originates in enemy-occupied territory, is frequently printed in neutral or allied countries adjacent to the countries for which it is destined. This immediately raises important questions of A. Authenticity, B. Procurement of supplies, and C. Transportation and distribution, D. Timing, E. Security. So, if you really want to learn about morale operations, I also highly encourage you. I keep saying Betty sends her love, but I don't think most people understand by what I mean by that. Go check out the documentaries or files for I'm not sure she was OSS or SOE. I think she may have been both. Her name was Elizabeth McIntosh, known as Betty McIntosh. You can find documentaries on her online, and it gets really good in-depth detail on morale operations. Now, some of the things Betty did were a little distasteful, like sending poison. She would get her hands on letters from Japanese troops from and to their wives, and she would alter them and change them and make them poison pen letters so that people would break up. That was a little, I never understood the purpose for that. But she did other things, and that was distasteful. She did other things that were really brilliant. And she did eventually succeed in inducing people to surrender, as well as succeed in getting Naga headhunters to behead the Japanese. She provided some motivation. The Japanese provided more motivation. Often it comes that you will plant an idea and try to motivate somebody, but they will not do something until the enemy motivates them into action. But you want to have already planted the idea and told them what you want to do and how they can capitalize on it or how it can be of service. So that when the enemy provides the proper motivation, they're ready and already know what to do. So, to work. But it gets really good into this part, the kind of paper, topography, ink, dictation, colloquial expressions, and general composition should be indigenous to the country. That necessitates having in the allied or neutral country the proper supplies and equipment for printing the pamphlets and the personnel to compose pamphlets, or providing the natives within enemy territory with proper supplies, equipments, and instruction in clandestine methods of reproduction. Now, we have many more ways to do things now than just pamphlets. We have the whole online arena. And as far as authenticity, we are the natives of this country and we're fighting ourselves. So it's a matter of, I don't want to spend too much time talking and not reading, but it's a matter of knowing your enemy. Those of you who have the stomach for it and aren't going to be turned by it, you need to know the enemy's propaganda. You need to know them inside and out. You need to know their attitudes, their aspirations, their goals, their weaknesses, everything about them. You need to know everything about your enemy and how to motivate them and demotivate them. You need to know all of the psychological factors of your enemy's minds. If you're going to be doing morale. Back to work. The problem of distribution is twofold. First, the pamphlets, cuts, mats, and other supplies often must be smuggled into enemy-held country by boat, submarine, plane, or agent. And the pamphlets must be distributed to the ultimate consumer within that country. The simplest method of distribution, scattering pamphlets from Allied planes, is not feasible, since this would immediately betray the real origin of the pamphlets. Again, this is our home, so we have more wiggle room there. And we have to work on both sides. We got to work on both of them. They've been played apart. We got to play them back together. And since we want to get off the fence, we have to learn to control our own anger and have principles. That's why the Geneva Convention is up, and I'm talking too much. Not feasible, since this immediately betray the real origin of the pamphlets. The airplane, however, may be used to make prearranged wholesale deliveries to resistance group, who would then be responsible for retail distribution. In any event, the distribution to the final consumer requires a network manned by native personnel in the country. Timing. In the case of pamphlets that are printed outside, will frequently be a slow in the Case of pamphlets that are printed outside the country, the transportation and distribution process will frequently be a slow and dangerous one, and a considerable time will elapse between the period when a pamphlet is printed and the moment it reaches the intended reader. Therefore, such false leaflets cannot be used to exploit the events of immediate and temporary importance. The IRS for security. The problem F We are at page 20, very bottom. The problem of security is an important one at every point of the process. The printing, whether done externally or internally, must be kept secret from enemy agents and even the people to whom the pamphlets are addressed, else the Allied origin would be disclosed. The smuggling of pamphlets or supplies into enemy territory is extremely hazardous and requires careful planning. Finally, the internal distribution of pamphlets endangers the security of both the distributor and the reader. 2. As practical security aid, pamphlets should preferably be small, probably not greater than 6 by 8 inches. This facilitates the smuggling and distribution. It also tends to protect the recipient of the pamphlet by making it much easier to hide. Not only should the pamphlet be small, but the message itself, whenever possible, should be brief. The message should stress one point and a suggestive positive action. 3. It is customary to conceal false pamphlets by using the cover and format of a familiar enemy publication, such as a magazine, newspaper, or timetable, and by inserting them into packaged goods containers of various sorts, books, magazines, and other pamphlets. This is also how you could distribute things like OSS manuals to resistance forces, other types of manuals and summary things to resistance forces. Make little bite-sized packages, bite-sized, so that people read it. You make it too long, they're not going to read it. We want to distribute things in bite-sized package for the limited attention of the modern audience. And I'm talking too much. Intelligence. False pamphleteering can be successfully executed only if based on accurate information regarding the current attitudes and morale of the group for which it is adapted. Various other types of expert information will be necessary depending on the nature of the pamphlet. For example, a pamphlet that gives instructions on sabotage must be based on detailed technical and regional knowledge. Yes, I want sabotage pamphlets. It's time. Talking quietly. Talking too much again. 8. Coordination with other agencies. Several different agencies and types of personnel must cooperate in false pamphleteering. MO's function is primarily that of writing and translating text and directing distribution. The distribution of pamphlets will usually be made by sympathizers and members of the underground groups in the country. The information which goes into the pamphlet must be obtained from every source possible, including SI, SO, FN, and RA. The natives of the country should be recruited by MO for the technical job of composing the pamphlets in order to ensure authenticity and idiom and expression. For special MO campaigns, false pamphleteers should coordinate their activities with those of propaganda agencies within the limits of security. False pamphlets that urge sabotage or open revolt must be worked out under coordination with the theater command. And this is the part I've been waiting for. Freedom stations. 22. Various types of cover are used by freedom stations. They may pose as an organ of subversive freedom group within an enemy area or a regular official station of the enemy, the special organ of an official enemy group, army, navy, or party, the organ of an anonymous or private group within enemy territory, not openly subversive. Some freedom stations have no very definite cover at all, beyond that of being a freedom station run by a colorful personality. I think we have a few of those. The question of identity being left as a mystery. The use of freedom stations. Freedom station transmission can be used for the following purposes. One, to spread demoralizing rumor among enemy soldiers and civilians. Two, to encourage patriotic resistance groups within enemy territory by acting as their spokesman. Three, to stimulate and direct sabotage and subversive activity. Four, to make preparations for direct popular uprisings and pro-Allied activity on D-Day. Five, to terrorize collaborationists and Access officials by blackballing and giving the impression of a vast and powerful underground. To divide the enemy group from group or nation from nation by spreading divisive stories, by posing as a representative of one group or nation, and by condemning, insulting, ridiculing another group or nation. To heckle enemy broadcasts. And you can also distribute real fucking news. In fact, with the way things are, real news might be much more powerful than rumors. Talking to each other. Establishing a Freedom Station. In addition to technical experts, the staff of a Freedom Station includes broadcasters who speak the language of the area to which transmissions are beamed without a trace of foreign accent and with full knowledge of current slang. Freedom broadcasters must appear to be typical representatives of the intended audience. So they already do this to the left. There are already people spreading right-wing propaganda and morale operations saying they're the left, subverting left activities and ideology, twisting it, seriously twisting it. Um, so basically, this is doing the same thing to them. Like, think of the Colbert Report, only more subversive and not obviously parody. Um, the other thing is there are white stations. We speak of freedom stations and white stations get confused. And I'm not talking about white supremacists or anything. I'm talking about, like, think Fallout 3 Free Dog. That would be a white station. Okay? It's sending messages out to the underground, out to the Allied, out to. So if this would be like Dems speaking to Dems, or liberal third parties speaking to liberal third parties, moderates speaking to moderates, that kind of thing, where you're raising morale instead of demoralizing. And I'm talking too much. Okay. Whether short or medium wave is used depends on the distance from the transmitter to the audience. Much greater distance with the same power can be achieved by a short wave transmitter, and upon the type of receiving sets possessed by the audience. In Europe, medium wave receiving steps are much more common than short wave. Mountainous obstructions reduce the range of audibility. Shortwave transmissions is very good across water, very poor across sand. Ordinarily, a freedom station is permanently located in friendly territory as close to the enemy area as power supply, transportation, and political problems will permit. The audience is gradually built up. On occasion, it may be feasible to employ mobile transmitters captured by transmitters or captured enemy transmitters for the freedom station purposes. So the freedom stations in the morale book versus the SI book are, I think I think it's the SI book, or is it Special Operations Group? Um, is different than it is in the morale handbook, because in the other handbook it separates freedom stations and white stations, and in this one they're kind of thrown together into the same thing. So yeah. Yeah. I'll just keep reading. May be feasible to employ mobile transmitters or captured enemy transmitters for Freedom Station purposes. Intelligence. A Freedom Station must have a detailed up to the minute intelligence. The best sources are interviews with travelers from enemy areas, interviews with prisoners of wars, reports from agents in the field, censorship material. Excellent intelligence is necessary because the clandestine station pretends to be closely identified with its audience, Freudian slip, and to be broadcasting from within the enemy or enemy occupied territory. And because much of the audience appeal of subversive broadcasts depends upon its ability to reveal intimate intelligence about personal and local affairs. While unverifiable rumors may be spread on occasion, it is important to hook all broadcast materials into facts which can be verified by the audience, therefore lending prestige to the medium and making the rumors more credible. So you're learning how they do this. If you learn how to do this, you can also spot shit. Let me read that last line again because I think it's really important. While unverifiable rumors may be spread on occasion, it is important to hook all broadcast materials onto facts which can be verified by the audience, thereby lending prestige to the medium and making the rumors more credible. Learn. Audience techniques. Freedom stations employ various techniques to obtain a larger listening audience, such as emphasizing the very mystery and danger of being a freedom station. Again, they kind of lump the freedom stations and the white stations together because there are two different types. There are the types I think are already trying to state this, and I hope you're getting it. There are the types where you are covertly trying to speak to the enemy, pretending you're the enemy. There are the types like Tokyo Rose, who sat there demoralizing the enemy without even be pretending to be them, right? So look up Tokyo Rose if you don't know who that is. Okay, it will be really easy. And then there are what I'd like to rather call resistance stations, which are on the air speaking to resistance personnel, speaking to the public about what's going on, what they can do, what the conditions are, what the information is, spreading subversive material, so on and so forth. And the other manuals make this clear. This morale handbook so far has not made that clear. So I want to clarify that point, and I am talking too much again. Okay, emphasizing the very mystery and danger of being a freedom station. Changing frequencies suddenly or breaking off transmissions and returning at a later period. Drama, remember, you got to create a show. This is the showman side of it. Providing inside dope, naming names and giving facts in detail, giving the impressions of eyewitness accounts. Using slang, vulgarity, and pornography when consistent with cover, giving gossip and dirt, ergo describing the sexual life of a prominent enemy officials and their wives. Providing local color through news items and songs. Making special group appeals to the youth, women, peasants, workers, Catholics, social democrats. 6. Selecting a domestic enemy or object of hate, an individual leader, political, social, or ethnic group, continually attacking him and blaming him for all evils. 7. Predicting military developments. 8. Pretending to have a tremendous following, appearing to address organized groups of comrades. Using catchy titles, songs, symbols, slogans, songs, and jokes. Catchy titles, symbols, slogans, songs, jokes. Providing news scoops. Playing incidental recorded music which will catch dial twisters. So you want to have good music. Good fucking music. Making broadcasts brief, 10 to 15 minutes, so that the danger to listeners will be minimized and the chances of hearing a particular message maximized. That's only if you're in, I would say enemy occupied territory, but that's only if you're in an engagement zone. If you're in a restricted area, let me put it that. If you're in a restricted area, if you're in a denied area, you have to do that, okay? But if you're outside the restricted and denied area, then you can just broadcast all fucking day long. Broadcasting on enemy domestic frequencies during lulls between programs and pauses in speeches during air raids and shortly after enemy radios shut down for the night, thus catching the regular enemy audience. Such as Stingle Freedom Station programs is used as a transmitter only a part of the time. It is common to use the same transmitter for several different programs, usually directed to different audiences. We also have to realize we have the internet and 24-hour streaming now. So it's changed just a little bit. Freedom Station presents an unusual security problem. Extreme precaution must be taken not to reveal its sponsorship or location. Nevertheless, there is little hope that its general sponsorship and location can be concealed from the enemy, who will spot it through radio engineering methods, and therefore it must be carefully concealed to prevent bombing attacks. Furthermore, while the enemy officials may discover the general location and sponsorships, the chances are that they will not reveal the information to their own public because it would only call attention to the Freedom Station and the possibility and possibly increase its audience. There is no record of an enemy country ever having exposed a Freedom Station. Well, I don't know about that because you have to remember when this was written and after this was written. I mean, I already talked about Tokyo Roast. I'll look it up. 2. Additional security problems arises from the fact that a Freedom Station is frequently so in indecent and deceitful that exposure might arouse public opinion in one's own country and result in public arguments on the moral issues involved. Special precautions must be taken that the station does not present information which, in view of its cover, it could not be expected to know, or information which comes from a recognizable source. I think they're talking about clandestine material there. And that speaks to anybody who does journalist work who has to protect their sources, especially if you're dealing with shit that you're not supposed to know. You know exactly what I'm talking about, and you know exactly what precautions to take. Talking too much again. Coordination with other operations. A Freedom Station may assist SO operations in the following ways: by giving instructions on and stimulating sabotage and guerrilla warfare, by acting as a spokesman for and encouraging an underground movement, by directing popular uprising and pro-Allied activities on D-Day. Coordination with military operations. A Freedom Station can assist the military in a theater of war by spreading confusion, demoralizing and diversive rumors, by encouraging resistance to the enemy, and by directing sympathetic groups on D-Day. Limitations of the Freedom Station. The effectiveness of a Freedom Station is limited by the following conditions: the power of the transmitter, the number of receiving sets possessed by the audience, the willingness of individuals in any areas to risk their lives listening to a forbidden radio program, the severity of the punishment for listening, the trust which listeners will put in a broadcast that professes to speak in their interests but has no authority behind it. The Freedom Station is also limited by the degree to which the listeners take the station seriously and do not feel that they are being hoaxed. A few slips, such as out of date slang, misinformation, easily checked up on, or failure to maintain cover, will quickly show up a clandestine broadcast. We also have social media, so about that as well. Remember, you want to play both sides. They are playing both sides of the board right now and trying to divide you and have you kill each other. You have to find a way, one, people protect themselves and work on playing people back together. And we have to do this while fighting a war. And the only way to do this is not to go overboard with letting Sherman burn and everything. You know what? If you know the Civil War, you know what that means. That's why we start with the Geneva Convention. Principles. Be better than your fucking enemy. Be better than the fucking Nazis. Be better than the fucking white supremacists. If you're just as bad as them, why is anybody going to help you? And trust me, I have my own anger with them and would like to rip their throats out with my teeth. But caution, 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 caution. As they say, go slow. Don't start with the extreme stuff. Give people a chance to see reason before you start chopping off their heads. Forgery! Number 23, and we are on page 26. A forgery is understood to mean the act of falsely making or altering any kind of document. Forgeries can be used for the following purposes and are highly illegal. So, you don't know what you're doing, you will end up in prison. So I suggest that people who don't know what they're doing there don't try and do it. We're going to cover this section anyway, but then a lot of the shit that resistance is doing is fucking illegal. But then when you're dealing with a tyrannical government where everything, they just use the law for genocide, then it kind of makes people not give a fuck about the law. However, we should, because the law that the tyrants are abusing, that's not really law and order. That's tyranny. And you don't want, when I say anarchy, I don't mean the ideal of anarchy. I mean anarchy as chaos, right? We don't want that completely taking over and everything becoming Mad Max. So it's finding a balance. And we have to work on reforming our whole justice system because right now there is no justice in the justice system. Use it as a chance to renegotiate the rules. Be very selective in what rules you break. Try to have a conscience about things. Back to forgery, I'm talking too much again. Forgery is understood to mean the act of falsely making or altering any kind of document. B. Forgeries can be used for the following purposes: to assist the theater commander when requested to deceive, confuse the enemy regarding our military intentions and capability, to harass and overburden the enemy in administration, to implicate enemy personnel to spread information and rumors destined to demoralize and divide the enemy to arouse false hopes. Forgeries are usually intended to fall into the hands of the enemy, of military personnel, enemy political police, or groups who may possess definite suspicions that will be confirmed by the forgery, and to implicate enemy personnel and destroy confidence in leaders. Forgeries will usually be more effective if supported by rumors and other morale operations. Conversely, forgeries are particularly important for confirming operations initiated through other channels. Extreme care must be taken to make the forgery appear authentic. Otherwise, it may have serious boomerang effect. It must be technically perfect. It must fall into the proper hands through apparently normal channels. It must be consistent with the facts known and impressions currently held by the enemy, preferably adding fuel to an already existing fire. Too many forgeries will defeat the purpose. Unless the purpose is that making all documents of the given kind suspect. A poor forgery may not only expose an agent, but may also expose and invalidate other more competent forgeries. Types of forgeries. Any kind of written communication can be forged. The following are common types. 1. Propaganda documents ostensibly designed to increase the morale of the enemy or improve his relations with an enemy ally, but actually written in such a way that the opposite effect will be achieved. 2. Periodicals which imitate the enemy periodicals and convey misleading or morale disturbing information, misleading or morale disturbing information. 3. Business documents using letterheads or other business forms of the either enemy, allied, or neutral firms and filled out with misleading information. 4. Cabled, either allied or enemy. 5. Canards, which are extravagant reports or documents circulated for the purpose of deluding large sections of the public. 6. Letters of all kinds. In addition to the above, upon request of the military authorities, the commander can be assisted by forging military documents, which include fake enemy military documents, especially fake ordered, and fake allied military documents, especially documents containing false intelligence on allies' plans and capabilities. Incriminating documents. Incriminating forgeries, especially letters, are prepared to cast suspicion upon a selected enemy or collaborationist personnel actually loyal to the enemy. Letters may be sent to the individual in question from a neutral country and may be incriminating by virtue of implication of their contents when intercepted by enemy censors. They may be sent from one neutral country to another and may be intercepted when passing through enemy territory. They may be sent to enemy police party or military officials from a neutral country and contain direct charges. They may be sent anonymously from within enemy territory to police party or military officials and contain direct charges. Or they may be left in spots where enemy offers will discover them. The latter type is dangerous, however, unless expertly done, preferably by pasting together words from newspapers, because police efforts will doubtless be made to discover the writers. Incriminating documents are often designed merely to harass and overburden the enemy's secret police. If supported by other evidence, they may, however, succeed in causing liquidation of undesirable persons, although this is a result that should not be anticipated unless circumstances are very favorable and the case is built up with the greatest skill. Additional results of incriminating documents may be resentment against the secret police on the part of an individual investigated, particularly of Army officers, and the slackening of secret police investigations of really disloyal personnel should a number of suspected individuals turn out to be loyal and cause embarrassment to the secret police. I really think you should pay attention to that part. Let me read again. Additional results of incriminating documents may be resentment against the secret police on the part of the individuals investigated, particularly Army officers, and the slackening of secret police investigations of really disloyal personnel should a number of suspected individuals turn out to be loyal and cause embarrassment to the secret police. Displacement. Targets. Collaborationists provide good targets because enemy police are more likely to be suspicious of these individuals than of their own people. Certain collaborationists have, in fact, turned out to really be working for the Allies. For this reason, extreme care must be taken in selecting the target. One must be absolutely sure that he is, in fact, a Quisling. A thorough and accurate intelligence report must be therefore first obtained on each potential target. We do not want the terror and white terror of the French resistance. Okay? Where a bunch of people got killed who were actually working with and for the resistance and for the revolution. For the revolution, excuse me. So, um, none of that shit. None of that shit. Army or Navy officers are usually good targets in view of the internal discord that would be created by a secret police investigation. Officials of the enemy, allied, or satellite nations usually suspect in the eyes of the enemy make good targets. Only those known definitely to be enemy sympathizers should be concentrated on. If a forged document is directed against a party official, he should ordinarily not be so high in rank that the lower officials will be afraid to do anything about it or refuse to believe it. The incriminating case, E. The offense charged or implied should be serious enough to be worthy of secret police attention. It should be consistent with the known past of the accused. For example, a man of wealth, particularly one who has often dealt with foreign firms, would be a most suitable person to implicate as having concealed funds in a neutral country. A direct accusation should be accompanied by several correct cooperating circumstances. A mere general charge that X is really not a Quisling but an allied agent is likely to receive little attention, but a statement of true particulars of X's whereabouts and actions on certain days, which he is alleged to have acted treasonably, will produce action. A letter of accusation should be written in the way in which the proposed sender would be expected to write. For example, it purports to come from an Argentine baker and to acknowledge to a Swiss banker the receipt of funds for the account of a French client. Ordinary commercial language should be used. The accusation should not be so subtly concealed that the censor or other intended reader will fail to discover it. A number of incriminating letters accusing different people should not be sent from the same source in the same style with the same paper. And I'm going to say ink. 4.
From the same printer. From the same area. From the same email address.
And this is where we come into modern things with hacking because, so when I said email address, what I should have said is computer. Because with modern hacking and modern means of transmitting information and letters and so forth, email and so on and so forth, that has to be intercepted. That has to be all laid out through computer science nerds. We need computer science nerds. We need the computer science nerds. We really, really do need to mobilize Silicon Valley. Everybody in the computer science departments. Because you know what I'm talking about better than I know what I'm talking about there. And you know what to do. Bribery and blackmail, while in many cases extremely effective, must be used with great caution. We are at 24, bribery and blackmail. Unless done skillfully, they may result in exposure of operator. This is especially true for bribery since the art of double crossing is an ancient one, and the bribed individual is apt to be an unscrupulous person willing to work for either side. Bribery and blackmail must be adjusted to the social customs and expectations of the recipient. In some areas of the world, particularly in the East and among some classes of people, bribery is almost as common as tipping in the United States. In other areas and among other classes of people, the mere suggestion of bribery is highly insulting. Such individuals as political and military leaders, newspaper editors and reporters, radio broadcasters, heads of business houses, religious professionals, and labor leaders, police, petty officials, customs officers, sentries are the most useful targets of bribery. The uses of bribery. In rare instances, bribery may be effective in accomplishing important strategic, secret diplomatic acts, especially in enemy satellite countries. See paragraph 33E. Typically, bribery is used to aid in carrying out less ambitious operations. Thus, for the purpose of spreading rumors, it may be desirable, especially in neutral areas, to bribe newspapermen or radio announcers. To plant rumors in newspapers or in broadcasts. Bribing of police officials may facilitate the creation of an incident or riot. In some cases, bribery can by itself achieve certain MO objectives. Thus, by judicious bribing of local leaders of various enemy or fence-sitting political, religious, labor, or professional groups, the group may be induced to engage in subversive work, or by selective bribing of such officials, dissension might be created in the rank of the organization. Successful bribery of an enemy or collaborationist official, followed by the exposure to the enemy authorities, can also be used to discredit or neutralize the effectiveness of such officials and create doubt and suspicion of all officials. E. Operations of bribery. 1. It is often desirable for the first service purchase to be of a minor character and one not involving great risk on his part. Once the initial bribe has been accepted and evidence of such bribery has been obtained, the demands can become successively greater. Where possible, the reward or bribe should also be of such nature as to become increasingly indispensable to the recipient. And I'll tell you right now that the right's favorite use of bribery amongst the lower classes of people is to control them with fucking drugs, especially meth. And they get drug addicts to do whatever the fuck they want for just little tiny fucking hits. Um, in fact, this is where I first noticed the right subversive activities was when they moved into the hippies drug territory and started taking over hippie drug territory, getting really fucking violent and creating drug pawns, both black and white and every other color, nationality, creed, so on and so forth. And the right supplied them their drugs and they did whatever they wanted them to do, following people, harassing people, killing people, raping people. And if they didn't do what the right wanted or spoke back to them, especially when it came to their African American pawns, they would kill them. This was my first introduction personally to the right and their groups of hunters. And they hunt people and fuck with people. And they are tied in with personnel who are corrupt. So be aware of that. We need to take those people, especially the ones who aren't right wing. This is where the dealers and the distributors and the underground comes in. You need to get those people away from the right. And all it does is takes is changing their supplier. That's all it takes, is changing their fucking supplier. And suddenly they're working for you instead of the rights. And I know my Latino gangs are already out working on that shit. Use the underworld. If you're going to be underground, you got to learn to use the underworld because they're already all up in that shit. And you got to take it back. And that's the place they made their first fucking moves, was in the underworld. So I always watch what the fuck is going on in the underworld. Increasingly indispensable to the recipient. In many cases, money may be less effective than goods or services, particularly in areas where certain goods and services are relatively inaccessible, while money is plentiful. The following may be useful depending on the needs and susceptibilities of the recipient: food, medicines, drugs. This may involve first inducing a dependency in the individual upon the drug. This has been going on for fucking centuries. Clothes, liquor, employment, escape to neutral countries, transportation of letters to friends and relatives outside, release of relatives or recipient from prison, protection, business tips, social and political favors, especially to aid the recipient's family. And it doesn't say in this, but also sexual favors. But the SOE manuals are very clear that when you have to deal with people who want sexual favors, don't put your people in that position. Find a professional to do it. Because that creates entanglements. And those entanglements can become fucking ugly. They can get your people killed. And they can get your people exposed. I will tell you from experience that a jealous lover is more dangerous to you than the entire enemy army. Because they know you. And they are up close and personal. Indirect or covert bribery may be used where it will reduce the danger of exposure and avoid the possibility of insulting the recipient. Covert bribery involves the use of such techniques as the following: selling goods below their value, buying goods above their value, losing to the recipient at gambling, making unwinnable bets with him, presenting him with expensive gifts, making heavy loans, granting monopolistic rights to certain revenues, products of service, or establishing philanthropic organizations as fronts subsidizing corporations. Types of intelligence required. To carry through successful bribery, it is essential to have full intelligence on the character of the recipient, his needs, weaknesses, grievances, fears, hopes, honesty, and integrity. What he feels deprived of in any way of goods and services should be known. Closest collaboration with X2 should be maintained. So you're going to need counterintelligence. Guess what? There are counterintelligence manuals on the web from the CIA. Go fucking get them. Especially my trimmers. Go get the fucking counterintelligence manual. Go get it and read it because that's going to help you catch the fucking narcs. As well as any other spies. Blackmail. Remember, bribery first, then bribery first, then blackmail. Blackmail is directed against the same targets and can be used for the same purpose as bribery. So, if somebody gets uppity on you after taking your bribes and they start refusing to do the shit that you bribed them to do, you start blackmailing them and threatening to expose them. That's why you always get intel and dirt on the targets first. It differs from bribery in that it threatens rather than rewards. And that threats rather than rewards are used to induce action. They are ordinarily threats to divulge information about the individual which would cause him serious harm, socially, politically, or physically. This information can be based on acts committed by the individual in the past, acts now being committed, acts which the individual believes he has committed, acts which he has not in fact committed, but for which evidence is planted against him. Threats to reveal infractions of rules, especially military regulations, constitute a good hold on a man. In wartime, regulations are so numerous, complex, and severe that it is difficult for anyone not to break some of them or to fear one has broken them. Blackmail is often a secondary stage of bribery. After a man has accepted bribes, he is kept on the line by threats that his duplicity will be exposed, or both may be used at the same time. The action demanded of the victim should be consistent with the blackmail risk involved. That is, care should be taken to see to it that the action demanded of him does not entail greater risks than the consequences of exposure of his original misdeed. H. Types of intelligence required. I think we're going to come back to types. Let me see. No, we're going to continue because we're almost at section 6 planning. So I'm going to continue to section 6 and then we're going to stop and pick this up in a different video. Okay. Types of intelligence required. Blackmail requires intimate intelligence on the man, his family, his friends, or his associates. Documentary or photographic evidence is valuable. 2. When incriminating information is difficult to secure or when no such information exists, it may be possible to either create it or to plant it. A study of the individual's character should suggest special vulnerabilities, drugs, alcohol, women, luxury, power, which may be exploited and result in transgressions. If this is not feasible, spurious documents and bits of telltale evidence can be used to build up a case. The latter procedure, however, will be extremely difficult and dangerous. Closest collaboration with X2 should be maintained. Coordination with other OSS agencies, inasmuch as bribery and blackmail are two techniques which will be also used by SO and SI. Projected operations should be checked with these branches. Frequently, an individual who has been successfully used by one branch can be used by another. 25. Coordination of MO channels and implements. Morale operations will be more effective if several implements are used to carry it out. For example, a rumor on an anti-Axis slogan may be planted in a Freedom Station broadcast. A few days later, it may be carried also in a false pamphlet. Through personal persuasion or possible bribery, a newspaper in a neutral capital picks it up. Evidence, forged, is discovered, confirming it. Finally, the propaganda radio picks up the item. Also, if you have real evidence, use that instead of making a false rumor. Okay? Unless it's going to compromise you in some way, always use the truth when you can over rumors, especially when it comes to fucking atrocities. The truth is always more powerful than a lie. Finally, the propaganda radio picks up the item. Certain channels naturally supplement each other. The same appeals can be made by Freedom Station and false pamphlet. In fact, it is common for false pamphlet writers within the enemy territory to attain much of their material from clandestine broadcasts. Bribery and blackmail may be employed to facilitate rumor spreading and false pamphlet distributions. Forgeries will confirm suspicions about individuals initially raised by Freedom Station's false pamphlets or rumors. And conversely, a false pamphlet, for example, can photostat and publicize an incriminating forged document. When several implements, photocopy. When several implements are used to carry out an MO project, and when the project is developed through the coordinated use of several implements and channels, the operation is referred to as a morale campaign. Morale operation campaign. The most important project should, if possible, be carried out in this fashion. Okay, we're going to stop there. We're going to be at section 6, planning, 26, general, page 33. Of course, you can continue reading this on your own at any time. Please do. It helps me a lot because I'm reading all this other stuff, and then it's really slowing me down reading all this to you guys every day I get a chance, and I have a bunch of other stuff I have to do because I am limited. I am limited in what I can do and how much time I have. So, everybody who's capable of reading for yourself, please do. I will be coming up with reading lists. Okay? Freya sends her love, and may Artemis watch over you all. May Artemis watch over you all. I will be working on some more of the Geneva Conventions today and see what else I can get finished. Be well.